Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our January webinar. I'm Lachelle Freeman, and I'm project manager here at the National Family Support Technical Assistance Center. We're so glad you are here today. We always ask you to feel free to put your name in the chat and tell us where you're from. So we're here today on our second series of Navigating the Family. And navigating the family, today we're going to be talking about siblings. Sometimes we overlook siblings, but we are really excited to have some really great people to discuss today, the family dynamics of siblings around mental health and substance use. So welcome, welcome, welcome. As you guys know, we are SAMHSA funds all of our programming that we have here, but the voices and the ideas that will be shared today are not particularly SAMHSA's ideas, but we do know that we thank them for allowing us to be able to provide this level of programming for us. So you guys know in our webinars, we use family-driven language. And what that means is that we are consistent with our actions, we are inclusive, we avoid blaming caregivers. We're non-judgmental in our talking, always respectful. We use strength-based and trauma-responsive language and person-first language. So I will not take up any more of your time. What I'm going to do is introduce you to Emily Hull, and she's going to talk to us about navigating the families around siblings. Emily?
Thank you so much, Lachelle. Thank you, thank you. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I am wondering if we can either just open up the waiting room, or Dana, I will assume that you are diligently letting people in. There's still some folks coming in to the waiting room. So maybe we can either just open that up to everyone, or
now go out there on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, welcome everyone to our discussion today on siblings, and we have a really special treat for you. We have an adult sibling panel to share their experiences, their lived experiences, which is really a focus of today. So I am going to actually share some slides briefly before we start our panel, because can everyone see my slides? Okay, great. Thank you, Shamar. Thank you. I can see you. Thank you for the thumbs up. Wonderful. So as Lachelle said, my name is Emily Hall. I'm the director of the Sibling Support Project. We are the first organization in the entire country dedicated entirely to supporting siblings of people with developmental health and mental health concerns. And we are located in right outside of Seattle, Washington, and we are a proud program of Kindering, which is Washington State's largest early intervention provider. And, we do our work with siblings in a few different ways. First of all, through education. We have a number of books and publications that we're really proud of. We also try to raise awareness about siblings by talking to the media every chance we get. And there are some examples of our publications in some of the places we've appeared in the media recently. We also provide direct support by teaching organizations around the world how to run these amazing things called SIB shops, which are really to provide the same kind of common sense peer support that parents get from a good parent-to-parent program, except for we're working with siblings and we're working with kids. So SIB shops are fun workshops for kids, usually between the ages of 8 and 13. And if you go to our website, we have a whole directory of SIB shops that are located in various states and countries. So if you're looking for a SIB shop, that's a great place to go to look. We also, we're working on developing an app for parents to use with preschool age children called SIB Time. We offer a number of other kinds of trainings, webinars, workshops. And then we also have 3 incredible online communities for siblings of different ages. SIB teen for adolescents, SIB 20 for siblings in their 20s, and then SIBnet, which is our largest and longest standing group for adult siblings. And I think most of our panelists are part of one of these groups, and I'm sure they would agree that they are wonderfully warm, supportive communities where siblings can connect, validate, celebrate, vent, and really just go through all of the experiences of life as a sibling in community with others. So let's back up for a second and think about why we should care about siblings, right? When we think about family support in our various fields, I know some of us are professionals, some of us may be parents, some of us may come to this space in different personal or professional capacities. But when we look at the general definition of family support, I think if we're really honest and if we look at what resources are available, we will all agree that traditionally family support has really considered parents, right, as part of that definition of family, maybe as all of that definition of family when we look at the supports and services that are available. And so, one of the things that we do to raise awareness about siblings is to talk about why brothers and sisters should also be considered as very important parts of that family when we talk about family support. So when we do this and we go to different places, we zoom around to webinars, we present at different conferences, and we talk about why it's important to support siblings, we tend to share the following points. First of all, we know from the research that sibling experiences really do parallel parent experiences, and that just about anything that we can say about being the parent of a child with support needs, and by the way, I'm going to use the term support needs as kind of a blanket term to include a whole range of developmental health and mental health concerns. Okay, so support needs is kind of just a general way to cover all those bases. But when we look at the research, we can pretty much put ditto marks on the sibling experience as compared with the parent experience, right? Siblings experience many, if not most, of the same concerns as parents, as well as some opportunities. The second reason we should be thinking about siblings is that sibling issues are really lifespan issues, okay? Think about this. Brothers and sisters are going to be in the lives of the person with support needs longer than anyone, right? Definitely longer than any service provider, doctor, therapist, clinician, and probably longer even than parents. This is a relationship that can easily exceed 7 decades, which is a long, long time. So sibling issues are lifespan issues. They evolve and change over the course of the life of the individual and family. Number 3, siblings spend quantity time. If you look over the course of the lifespan, siblings tend to have a high level of involvement in each other's lives, particularly as children when they're young, and then again towards the end of life for various reasons. So if you look at the lifespan as a whole, siblings spend a good deal of time together. It's also really important time. It's quality time. And this is particularly true, I think, for children, the main age that we work with at the Sibling Support Project, because we recognize that siblings are really 24/7 social models. Okay. Siblings have a great impact and influence over the social development of a child with support needs. And then last but not least, siblings really are the next generation of caregivers. And I think many more organizations are recognizing this and are inviting siblings into the circle to be part of that support community and to figure out, well, what supports do you need as a sibling to be a caregiver? When we think about siblings' experiences, and I'm not going to spend a long time on the next 2 slides because I think that our conversation today with our panelists is going to naturally bring up a lot of these themes. And let me back up by first saying that, when we think about the sibling experience, you meet siblings who say, gosh, the reason that I am patient and tolerant and I found my dream job and a helping career, pretty much anything great that's happened to me in my life, it's because of my sibling who has support needs, right? On the other hand, you have other siblings who say, well, actually, the reason my life is all messed up is because of my sibling with support needs. But for the vast majority of siblings, it's really important to recognize that it's not all great and not all challenging. It's actually all of the above at any given time. And so today's panel and today's presentation is really just to draw some awareness to the fact that the sibling experience is kind of a mixed bag, sort of like life for all of us, right? Um, so when we think about how we can support siblings, we want to remember the challenges for sure, but also the positives and the strengths and the great things that we can build upon when we think about sibling support. So let's talk a little bit about some of these unique concerns. I want you to think about siblings you might know. Maybe you are a sibling. Maybe you're the parent of a person with support needs who has other brothers and sisters. So you're the parent of siblings, or maybe you're a professional who works with families. And think about these unique concerns. Think about which of these you've observed or felt yourself. The need for information, I think, is probably the most surprising one for people, that siblings really do need to have information about their brother and sister's diagnoses and support needs, right? Parents, you have access to professionals, to doctors, to all sorts of sources for information and resources. You know, siblings, if they're lucky, right? If we're lucky, I'm in that category of sibling myself. If we're lucky, we're getting information from our parents. And as children, especially, that doesn't always happen for the best and most loving reasons, right? So it's really important to be aware that, yes, siblings need to have an understanding of their brother and sister's diagnosis so that they can explain it to themselves, maybe to others who ask questions in not so kind ways, especially for kids, and also to sort of navigate their own experience. Information is power. It's really, really important. Over identification, right? Will I get or do I have what my sib has? Isolation, the same kind of isolation that I think parents feel when suddenly your child is given this diagnosis and you're part of this club that you really didn't want to be part of. You had no intention of joining, but here you are. And this feeling that maybe no one can understand my experience or relate to me. Very, very common among siblings. I think that's why our online communities are so powerful and so important for sibs to connect with others who can really relate to and understand their experiences. Increased caregiving, you know, that can start in childhood for some siblings. You know, they'll be the helper. Um, I know we have one sibling out here in the audience who, you know, was on a panel at once and she said, I was that little sibling helper. You know who you are. Um, Resentment, right? When all of the family resources are kind of locked up into one person, that kiddo with support needs, that person with support needs, it can be easy to understand why siblings could feel resentful of that, of the time and attention that their brothers and sisters get. The fact that family life seems to revolve around this person, our ability to go out into the community, to a restaurant on vacation, right? This all is kind of driven by, you know, the needs of that person, and that can cause a lot of resentment. Embarrassment, especially if there are maybe some socially unexpected behaviors that come along with the diagnosis, with the support needs. Guilt, the gift that keeps on giving. I could do a 2-day training on guilt alone. I should have a PhD in guilt, I sometimes think, as a sibling myself. Um, Guilt in so many ways, survivor's guilt, maybe surpassing developmental milestones, a guilt for conflicts, typical natural conflicts that siblings have. Well, if one sibling has some, you know, pretty considerable support needs, having a fight with that person, you know, might cause some guilt afterwards, after you calm down and sort of settle down and realize, oh, you know, I kind of lost my cool. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Um, Pressure to achieve, to be the good kid, very, very common among siblings. We were joking earlier. We were kind of doing a little run through before you guys joined us, and one of the panelists, you know, joked, you know, we were all on time and we were all on top of it, and one of them joked, "Oh yeah, you know, like overachieving siblings, what us?" Very, very common. And then a lot of future concerns about the care of the person who has support needs. Where are they going to live? what other supports will be available, finances, but also future concerns about our own lives. Will I find a life partner who is willing to accept maybe a role as a caregiver for my brother or sister? Right? A future with me might mean a future as a caregiver. Or will I have a child maybe with the same concerns that my brother or sister has, right? Is this a genetic consideration? So all of these can really contribute to um, the sibling experience in kind of a fraught way. But the flip side of that, I said it wasn't one or all the other. There are a lot of unique opportunities that come along with being a sibling, and these are just a few of them. Again, if you're a parent, if you're a sibling, if you're a professional, I want you to think about these in the people you know or in the person you are. Tolerance, right? For, many siblings, diversity training begins, every day before breakfast, 365 days a year. And so siblings can often, have a real appreciation and be able to create space for difference. Advocacy, many of us are natural born advocates. Insight, I sometimes think of as wisdom, as a result of having maybe a different understanding of the human condition at maybe a young age, maturity, humor. I'm sure many of us who have a loved one with support needs in our family can agree that we might have a, pretty interesting sense of humor. And sometimes we just have to laugh at the absurd situations we find ourselves in. Um, Pride, the amazing pride that siblings can take in their relationships with one another, which might not look like the relationships their friends have with their typical brothers and sisters, but it's really, really special nonetheless. Vocation, many of us, and the research supports this, folks, many of us find ourselves in helping professions. Can't help ourselves. Inspiration, many of us are inspired by the resilience and grit that we see in our brothers and sisters who go out into a world every day that isn't so accepting of people who are different, quote, different. Appreciation for our families, for our parents. We see the great lengths that our parents go to kind of, keep the world turning, keep the trains on the tracks, right? We really do appreciate that. And loyalty to our families, loyalty to the people that we allow to become close to us, the people who pass the litmus test. There's an expression in the sibling community that our brothers and sisters are kind of a litmus test, and we can tell a lot about other people by the way that they respond to our brothers and sisters. Are they open and accepting? Right? And if those folks pass the litmus test and they come into our inner circle as friends and loved ones, we have a tremendous loyalty to those folks. So we could talk a lot more about those, but we don't have a ton of time. So I want to flip the switch and talk about how we can support siblings. I think we have a better understanding now of why, but let's just share a few tips on how all of us as parents, as providers, as friends, how we can support siblings. Okay, the first way is I talked about the need for information earlier, to really make sure that we're creating opportunities to provide siblings with age appropriate information. This is especially true of parents who I think sometimes are afraid. They don't want to worry or burden their other kids. But the truth is, this diagnosis, this support need is impacting the entire family. And if we don't talk about it, it sends a message that it's not okay to ask questions and it's not okay to have feelings about this. So parents, talk to your kids. Providers, just take note. Take note. Are there siblings in the family? What questions might they have? How can you make yourself available to them? Really, really important for siblings to have information. Peer support is so, so important. I talked about our online communities for adults, young adult and teen siblings. I talked about sib shops for children who are siblings. But those aren't the only ways for siblings to connect, right? If you are a service provider and you guys do a big annual holiday gathering, for example, why not carve out opportunities for maybe a sibling activity as part of that event? Think about ways to get siblings together. It is so important, the same way it's important for parents to have access to each other and to share that peer support. Communication, encourage good communication with typically developing children and with siblings in general. We're over here at the Sibling Support Project. We're big fans of this idea of active listening, which if any of you are familiar with the concept, it's really just being very present when you are talking with a child or with anyone, right? Making eye contact, asking them questions about what they're saying, recapping what they're saying. This is so, so important for siblings. Um, and when we work with parents and we work with providers who are really trying to support young siblings, we talk a lot about active listening, and we talk a lot about the fact that siblings want to be heard and validated, and that most problems maybe can't be solved, and certainly not by us, as much as we want to help and fix, but just by hearing and validating what a sibling has to say can go such a long way in supporting them. So that communication is really, really important. Setting aside special time with siblings. And the good news here, folks, is that a little goes a long way. Okay. Maybe it's 20 minutes, after you put your kiddo with support needs to bed. You can allow the other child to stay up and spend that time. Maybe it's running errands, and just bringing the sib with you. For adults, maybe it's carving out time to get together for coffee, right? And to really just spend that time mindfully with that person. Learning more about life as a sibling. You're about to do that through our amazing panel. You're going to learn about their lived experiences. There are so many great books. There are films out there. You come to our website. We'll recommend some books that you can read to learn more about life as a sibling. And I hope today's webinar is really part of that. Maybe it's the beginning of your learning about life as a sibling. And then encourage parents, or parents if you are a parent, reassure your children by making plans for the future. I can't tell you how many posts we see in our adult sibling groups online that are written by siblings who are really, really contemplating and maybe concerned about the future of their brothers and sisters, and who will help support them, and how can they as siblings help support their brothers and sisters, but also balance that with self-care and living the life that they want to live, right? This is definitely a pull that many siblings feel, right? How can I be there for my brother or sister and also live the life that I want, that I dream? And it shouldn't have to be a choice. We talk a lot about how future planning should begin early, and it should be, about every next transition. Maybe it's the transition from year to year in school. How can you include siblings in that conversation? Oh, your brother's going to a new school next year. What do you think it's important for his teachers to know? It can be as simple as that. That way, if you build this sort of familiarity with talking about the future as the next natural step, when we have to make big decisions about residential, about services in the future, it's not such a big, looming, ominous topic. It's just the next natural step. And then the last thing that I want everyone to remember is that the single strongest factor affecting siblings' interpretation of developmental health and mental health concerns is how the parents interpret these conditions. So if parents, you feel like, wow, this diagnosis is the biggest tragedy to befall our family, chances are pretty good that your other kiddos are going to feel that way too. But if instead we decide, okay, this wasn't plan A, but we're going to meet this with as much grace and humor as possible, we have every reason to expect that siblings will follow suit. Okay. I now want to turn it over to our amazing true experts, our panel. We have Erica, Daniel, Cheryl, and Sunita, and I'm going to ask them to, I'm going to stop my share for now. And I'm going to ask if we can spotlight all of our panelists.
They need to turn their cameras on to be spotlighted.
Oh, yes. Erica, Daniel, Cheryl, Sunita, if you could please turn your cameras on. There's Daniel. I see Daniel, Sunita. Join me up here. on the hot seat. I mean, in the spotlight. Just kidding. Okay. Welcome, welcome. Let me close this down. I think we're missing, there's Erica, and we just need Cheryl.
I'm here. There you go.
Welcome, 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 guys. I am going to just kick it off, and I'm going to start by inviting you one by one to introduce yourself. So tell us where you live. You could just tell us what state you live in, what you do during the day, and then what's one thing that you'd like to do for fun. I think I threw that in there. You weren't preparing for that, but hopefully that's not a hard one to find, like one thing you do for fun. So who you are, where you live, what you do during the day, and one thing you do for fun. I will kick it off to Daniel, and then you can just popcorn it to the next person.
Yeah, so my name's Daniel Torado. I've been living in Rochester for 30 years now, and in my corner of the universe, it gets very cold here. It's very sunny in the summertime, and there was a long time ago I didn't like living here. I wanted to get back to my roots in New York City, but as I matured, honestly, I'm a Rochesterian at heart. My brother has been raised here, so we enjoy the community as best as we can.
Awesome. And Daniel, what do you do during the day?
I'm actually a carpet cleaner by trade. I've been working for a company about 10 years now. And it's a very small business. It's family owned, but I've been very well settled into this company. I've learned a lot. It's been a good trade to just, make ends meet. So
Nice. And one thing you like to do for fun?
I love pinball. There-
Pinball. Do you have a pinball machine?
I don't. I'm going to work at that one point, but there's a couple of nice places here in Rochester. Strong Museum has a pretty decent collection, but there's actually a private collection that's out in East Rochester, and there's several different tables there, and I love going there. I get a membership every once in a while, and for a few months I'll just go anytime when they're open, and it's all you can play.
Nice.
So
All right.
yeah.
Pinball. That's the first time I've ever heard that on a panel. So, okay, who do you want to popcorn it to?
How about Sunita? She's right next to me.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sunita. I live in a suburb called Naperville in the Chicago, Illinois area. And I'm a healthcare administrator by trade and a nurse. And I think the other question was, what do I like to do for fun? Not as interesting as Daniel with the pinball, but I like spending time with family and friends. That best part of my day is just being able to catch up with my kids that are growing and hearing what they're doing. That's what I enjoy.
Great. And who would you like to popcorn it to?
Let's go to Cheryl.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cheryl Albright. I'm currently living in Fletcher, North Carolina, which is outside of Asheville, by way of Florida and Rochester, New York. So that's kind of a small world. I'm an occupational therapist by training, also a yoga therapist, and for fun, I like to bake.
Awesome. And that leaves you, Erica. I
That
was
leaves
thinking
me.
about cookies. Okay, sorry. That leaves you, Erica.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Erica Lonergan. I live in Oakland, California. And by day and evening, I am an associate marriage and family therapist. And for fun, I enjoy watching Warriors basketball games. So.
Very nice. Okay. Well, we could get together and play pinball and eat something delicious that Cheryl bakes and watch Warriors. Yeah, and hang out with Sunita and her kids. Okay. So the next question is, and I guess let's just go in the reverse order. So we'll start with you, Erica. Tell us about your brother or sister with support needs, their age or situation in your case, Erica. If you have a name for whatever their diagnosis is or was, Yeah, and just tell us a little bit about your sib, just brief little intro.
Okay. My sister, I'm the oldest. I have a younger sister. She passed away in 2022 when she was about 49. And her diagnosis, back in the 70s, it was called mental retardation. And over time, it became intellectual disabilities. And so that was kind of discovered maybe when she didn't start talking around by the age of 4. My parents started having some tests and observations done for her. And then when she was probably late teens or 20s, I want to say diagnosed with bipolar disorder as well. And then she additionally had a seizure disorder that she probably came out in her, I want to say maybe adolescence, I would say. And does that answer everything? Was that everything you asked about?
Yes, and what is your sister's name, Erica?
Oh, her name is Tara, Tara.
Tara. Great. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm so sorry for your loss. And I'm so glad that you are here with us today because, one of the things, as you know, in the sibling community, it's like once a sib, always a sib, whether or not that person is physically here, our experiences with our brothers and sisters shape so much of who we are. And so I really, really appreciate you being here to represent the perspective of a sibling whose loved one has passed. So thank you for that. Cheryl, we'll just keep going around in the reverse order. Can you tell us about your sib?
So I'm the youngest. I have an older brother named James. I'm trying to think now. He's 48. Level 3 autism, same route that Erica just talked about. Back in the day, it was, MR and then changed to IDD and then added autism and alphabet soup. And as he got older, had some issues with a group home that severely neglected him to the point of having PTSD and anxiety from trauma. And so that has been interesting to navigate because he's non-speaking. So when you have these subset of behaviors, what is IDD, autism, and then what is the, behavioral health side of things.
Yeah, and we find also there's so much alphabet soup, I think is the best way to put it. There's sometimes so much comorbidity among developmental and mental health diagnoses and concerns that it's like just these things go hand in hand, and it's hard to separate them when you're talking about a whole person, right? Because so much of it is connected. And so thank you for sharing that. Sunita?
So my brother, Shankar, is 49. I am older than him. He was nonverbal until the age of 6, and my parents took him to the Mayo Clinic and found out that he has a chromosomal abnormality of chromosome number 8. So he presents as like a mild Downs and he has garbled speech, and he has developmental delays in other ways as well.
Thank you, Sunita. And last but not least, Daniel.
Yeah, so my sibling is Anthony. We are both fraternal twins. And he was diagnosed around age 2. And he, at first, I believe it was partial deafness. And then later on, the diagnosis of autism was included. So my brother has dealt with a lot of learning disabilities. He is considered nonverbal. He is pretty intelligent, but I mean, because of having intellectual disabilities, doesn't give him the ability to be more cognitive in life, being able to develop I would say his personality, to be able to communicate all the skills that a person needs to thrive. My brother is severely limited in that respect. And he knows some basic skills to survive in life, like how to bathe and how to eat. He doesn't need assistance in that. But to hold a job, to go to school and get grades, my brother's never experienced that. And to be able to communicate and convey how he's feeling, he struggles with that because of the autism spectrum disorder. So, but my parents love him. I have good friends that respect him, and all our friends in the congregation that we go to, they show him a lot of respect and love. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Thanks, Daniel. And I think you mentioned there also is some mental health stuff that goes along with a lot of Anthony's diagnoses, just in terms of the anxiety and some of the behavioral stuff that you had mentioned before as well. So, so thank you for telling us a little bit about your siblings. I would like to now think back. Let's flip the switch. Let's go back in time and think about growing up. How did you learn about your siblings' diagnosis? How did you first become aware or understand that your sibling was different?
If I
You want
may,
to kick it?
yeah, if I may, I've been aware for a very long time. I mean, from a very young age, probably since the time that we could walk, probably since the time when I was a toddler, when I could actually walk and talk and ask mom questions. I know there's a recording somewhere that my mom recorded. She recorded our baby voices when we were that young on cassette. And one of those recordings is my brother actually having a meltdown. He used to cry a lot, getting off the bus. I don't know if it was a sensory thing or not, but from that time on, it was always, Mommy, why is Anthony crying? Is he sad? Why does he do these things? Why does he hit his head when he gets upset? Why does he bite his arm? So a lot of those questions, I was always asking my parents questions of why my brother is the way that he is. And, to tell a child it's autism, and it is true that information was gradual, and my understanding of it is even more, has grown since being so young.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. And I think that's one of the challenges for parents, because I mean, even as adults, it's hard to understand what is autism, right? Like autism means a lot of different things, depending. So to explain that to a child, and that's why, when we counsel parents and we give advice on how to talk to especially young siblings, really to focus on language that is child friendly, that is really more about what the child can see and observe. Like, you ask great questions, like, why is Anthony biting himself? Like, why is he hitting his head on the wall? Those are observed behaviors that you're asking about. And so even for a parent to say, well, it's autism or it's bipolar or whatever, to a child that might not mean a lot, but to be able to explain it at that age as an understanding of what they're seeing and experiencing. And then as that child gets older and their understanding of the world becomes a little bit more sophisticated, to be able to say, sometimes people with autism or whatever, fill in the blank diagnosis, sometimes your brother gets frustrated and, because of the diagnosis, this is how he expresses himself, or whatever, but just in language that children can understand. Thank you for that. Who else wants to answer this? How did you become aware of your siblings' differences?
I can go. I was the younger sibling, so it sounds like the other two are the older siblings. So that was normal. There wasn't ever really a conversation about, this is your brother's diagnosis and this is what it means. And there was no time for that, because when he was younger, he was high support needs. Like he was really a 2-on-1. It wasn't a 1-on-1, and he was fast. And so, there wasn't a whole lot of time for asking questions. And I don't remember, it was just it was what it was. And then as I got older, so when like ADA came about, and IDA when kids had IEPs, then I remember asking a lot more questions because I was like, oh, this is going to impact later on. So it was what, late 90s. And so it was like, oh, now he has an IEP and this is what this means. The language, we're all about the same age, I can tell. So the language was very different before. And so we didn't have those pieces of paper that said, this is what it is. Because it felt like it was always changing. And we also grew up in a very small farm town. And so there wasn't a whole lot of resources in general. And so I don't ever remember having like a sit down conversation about, and I don't think I ever asked either. I think I just figured it out.
Very common among siblings. We just kind of figure it out. Sunita, do you want to take this one? How did you learn about shunkers?
So it's I'd say it wasn't until about a year ago that I actually knew what his chromosomal abnormality was. Just like many of our siblings, my parents didn't really say what was going on with him. I just knew from the time of his birth that there was something. It was very ambiguous for me. The fact that he was nonverbal, I just remember going to speech classes and just different kinds of therapies, but I didn't really have somebody sit down and explain, this is what's happening, this is where we're going, this is what we're trying to do. I think it was just a lot of clarity, even that my parents wanted, but they couldn't really get because he didn't, quote unquote, fall into a certain bucket and nobody seemed to really know how to direct them. I'm sure that younger siblings now probably have a little bit more accessibility with diagnosis than maybe the time that my brother was born. But maybe that's an assumption on my part.
Thanks, Sunita. Thank you. And Erica, last but not least.
Yeah, I don't distinctly remember being told of a diagnosis or anything like that, but I know instinctively I felt protective of my sister for whatever reason when she was young. My parents would say I communicated for her a lot. I would try to interpret what she was trying to sort of, because she had some words, but not a lot. And then as she got older, I got very protective of her. She was definitely a litmus test, as you referenced in the slides, mostly for boys that came home that thought they wanted to date me. It was interesting because she physically presented as typical. And so people would come up and approach her as if she were a typical functioning child person. And then when she couldn't respond, that was where I would step in. And again, just very, very protective. You could say whatever you wanted to about me, but don't even think about looking at my sister wrong, saying anything about her, things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting, Erica. I saw just came up from the chat. Sometimes like at little bubbles, and someone said, it's actually harder when the disability or the support need is invisible, because there's like an expectation that people have of your sibling that they're going to respond in a certain way or behave in a certain way, and when they don't, when it's that sort of unexpectedness, that's when things can get a little tricky. So, and that's, I think, sometimes when our protective nature comes out. So that need to protect. Thanks for sharing. Speaking of challenges, that's going to be my next question. Can you think back as a child growing up, were there any special challenges that you think you faced because of your brother or sister? Whether it was at home with parents, at school with peers, just out in the community. I mean, I think, Erica, you just talked about that, sort of the judgment of people who, would react a certain way when when your sister didn't respond the way they were expecting. What other challenges can you guys recall? Sunita, you're unmuted.
Yeah, I think a great challenge for us was the ostracization that happened within our community. I know that there were families that literally stopped talking to my family. I remember snippets of conversation where my mom would be telling my dad about not being invited to certain things because of how my brother is. I think that was really painful. After having my own children too, I empathize with it a little differently. So that was really tough. We were in a smaller town in Michigan. So as it was, diversity wasn't the case in that area. So this further isolated us. And I think that really, really was impactful to my mother in particular. So that was a huge, huge challenge that they had to kind of work through.
Yeah, thank you for bringing the cultural reference in, Sunita, because we do a lot of work around how being a sibling is just one of our identities. It's just one layer of who we are. It's just one sometimes of the marginalized identities that we carry. And so when we have intersections of those marginalized identities, it can just really make things very isolating and very, very challenging. And you point out something that's so important, I think, especially for families whose loved one has a mental health concern and substance use. The way that sometimes our families are shunned or cut off is really, really painful, right? There can be a lot of judgment that goes on with that, associated with those mental health and substance use issues, particularly, and certainly true of disability as well. But in my personal opinion, I think it can be even greater when the major sort of presenting diagnosis has to do with mental health, and then the substance use that oftentimes can come with that. There's a lot of judgment and so much stigma that goes along with that. And we as siblings, we're just collateral damage, right? Because we get shunned too. We get cut off too. So, and it can be very, very painful, I know, for parents and for siblings as well. Thank you for sharing that, Sunita. Daniel.
I think definitely the hardest part in my life was just trying to connect, trying to make friends. I was very self-conscious of myself, my circumstances, my situations. I was definitely protective of my brother. I was always careful. I was careful to his sensory needs as an autistic individual. I was always care of his attention. And I was too afraid to put myself forward, to advocate myself whenever it came to making friends, whenever it involved me wanting to really enjoy something extracurricular, in a manner of speaking. Kids, they have aspirations and dreams, and I always felt like a lot of the aspirations I got weren't achievable, or there was some kind of obstacle. And whenever there was an obstacle, I just kind of like put my hands up in the air. I was like, well, I can't do that. I guess I can't be a drummer. I guess I can't be a trumpet player, so I'll have to do something else. A lot of my hobbies that I've gained now as an adult are from me. And going back to connecting with people and making friends, it's really hard when a lot of people they ask you, well, what's going on with your brother? Why doesn't he go to public school like the rest of us? Why isn't he in the same class as we are? And to explain autism to someone in the late 90s is really hard than try to explain autism today. I think the first time I saw a PSA about autism, I said, that's exactly it. That's how I grew up, because it was a young man in his teens who just only heard about what autism is. And then as he gets older, he's hearing more about it until at the end of the PSA, his son has autism. So diagnosis over time is an understanding of it is improved. But I grew up in a time where nobody truly understood what that meant. And I had to explain it from my own experience. And I didn't even know that autism was considered a spectrum. I was told it was a level, but now for it to be called a spectrum makes even more sense because seeing other students and my brothers, because there's a school here that is for handicapped and mentally disabled children that my brother attended, and every individual is different. And I don't think many people understand that. I think a lot of folks that live outside of our scope, they don't really understand that until they're actually living it and seeing it firsthand. And it was very hard.
Absolutely. I think
It-
there's a lot of misconception around different abilities. And also, I mean, I think that, not to harp on it, but I think that when it comes to the mental health component, there's so much misunderstanding and so much stigma and judgment. Yeah, just to add to that.
Just one more thing too. It is hard when a lot of people just kind of stop at just the disability. And you can tell a lot of peers, a lot of family members don't know how to help. They don't know how to advocate. And I can't remember how my parents told them how to advocate. And it's possible because they weren't given the skills or the tools they need for that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Danielle. There's such a big emphasis these days on peer support, and we're doing a lot of work in advocacy to ensure that that siblings are brought into that space of learning about peer support and being part of that community. So thank you so much. Erica or Cheryl, do you want to talk about the challenges?
I mean, similar to what people have said so far. So small farm town, limited resources. Back in the 80s, there wasn't really anything. If you didn't know our family, you would have thought I was an only child because we went to 2 separate schools. And then by the time I was in junior high, he was in a group home. So you really thought that there's some strange equipment around the house, there's some therapy balls, there was some, ball pet in the basement. I thought all of this was normal. No, not every kid has these things. So, I always felt different. And I don't know if it was if you didn't know me, you didn't know. You didn't know. So it was not like a secret, but it was still, I don't know, my father had a saying that we don't say much, which we all know is not healthy at this point. So there was a lot of, we don't talk about it. And I think he had a lot of shame of putting into a group home as young as my brother was. So I think understanding that now, but there was like, we don't talk about that. We're keeping it in the family. Yeah. So he also I had an aunt with Down syndrome as well. So this wasn't the first developmental disability in the family. And so I think him being a sib himself, not realizing that that was a thing, and then having a child with a disability who then they had to put in institutionalized care pretty young, brought a lot of behavioral health challenges to my father as well. But the young institutionalized care before things were really like overthought, I think there was just a lot of abuse and neglect and caused a lot more behavior. So when you're talking about, bringing up the mental health piece, it's hard to know, especially in somebody who's non-speaking, the trauma they've been under. And so now that we have a better understanding of what trauma does to the brain and the body, what I present on a lot in my own career. And this is what it can look like when we don't have words. This is what it's going to look like. I've got an audience now of almost 200 behavioral health professionals. I have not found one that will work with somebody who's not speaking. And he needed it from trauma, from my father's death, from just life events. And we can't find these people anywhere. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw that as a challenge out to the
Yeah, well, this is the right audience for it. We have a lot of folks who work in the field. So So challenge, challenge thrown. Thank you for sharing that, Cheryl. And it's like what came to mind as you were talking was that movie Encanto. We don't talk about Bruno, right? For anyone who doesn't think that Encanto is a sibling movie or is a movie about all of our families, I mean, whether you're a parent or watch it again through this lens. We always recommend it as a sibling movie. And then Erica, did you have a chance to answer this one? No.
No, I think for me, I would say the biggest challenge, I think it was just not really having a space to process what this meant to me, a safe space to complain about sometimes when I was embarrassed by my sister or angry or hurt or grieving the fact that I didn't have a typical sibling relationship and was probably never going to. And I think my parents just weren't capable of opening that space up for me. And because there were not supports like this out there for siblings, I just didn't really have any way to deal with that. I think I can see a lot of things I did to cope with the feelings that in hindsight now I'm realizing, and that's kind of what's led me to where I'm at in my life now. But yeah, I think that would be probably the biggest hurdle or difficulty I had as real. My parents also kind of used, I want to say, used my sister as sort of a shield, a buffer in some ways, whether sometimes socially we didn't do things, it was too difficult. I think they also used her as a buffer from connecting with me, my mother in particular. And ironically, when my sister died, I thought, buffer's gone, it's going to change, and it still hasn't. So it's really, it's really interesting. Yeah, it forms you in just so many ways, and I think a lot of them I've realized since I became a parent, and it's been really healing that way for me.
For sure. That's such an important point for anyone who's lost a sibling. And I think somebody was going to post in the chat. There is a group for people who have lost a sibling with support needs. Just because that person is no longer physically there, it doesn't necessarily change the family dynamic. Like their presence may still, their essence may still have the same impact on the family dynamic. Just because they're not physically there, it may not change. In fact, in some cases, some of the issues might become more amplified. So, and I do see that I forgot to mention, but you guys are in the audience, you're amazing. You're already putting questions in the chat. So please do that. We're going to have time for Q&A. I want to get through a few more questions, and then I really want to turn it over to the audience because I'm sure they have questions for you guys. Let's flip the switch now and talk about the good things, the silver linings. What opportunities, good things, what is one silver lining that, or opportunity that came your way as a result of your brother or sister?
I can start.
Thanks.
I worked at a summer camp for 20 years, the same camp that he went to, and I am still friends with a lot of those individuals. So he did create a tribe of people, and my husband jokes now that I collect tribes of different people. So now I have a sibling one, and there's the camp one, and there's a yoga one, and blah, blah. But the first one was really that camp family. They saw me grow up. My mother cooked there for a while. My father was always on the board. So it was just kind of a family affair. But then I still had, contact with a lot of those individuals, and some people still remember him, and they'll reach out on Facebook and like, how is your brother doing? Where is he now? And things like that. So it's created an amazing community.
Thanks, Cheryl. Silver linings, good things. Daniel, you look like you want to say something. You're still thinking? You look like you want to say something.
I'm always thinking. I would say finally coming to terms with just needing help myself, and because I do have an anxiety disorder, I don't think it's because of my sibling that I have anxiety. I think that's something that was inside me all this time. But having experienced therapy and getting the medication I need, um, I feel like because of the experience that I can advocate for my brother now that I know what it takes to advocate for yourself. Um, and some of the experiences I've had just talking to the therapist has really helped me come to terms with some insecurities I've had for my brother. They're still there. I mean, they do pop up once in a while. A lot of stuff that we hit on at the beginning of the webinar was, yeah, that it actually hit home for me. I lived that. I experienced that. And just uh trying to be more forgiving of him and less resentful. I think that's a silver lining. Maybe that comes with maturity. Um, I would like to see other kids that grow up with siblings with special needs have those skills to be more forgiving, to love them, and just to have hope. Have hope that, everything will turn out okay. And when you have that hope, you're going to endure with what you have on your plate, because they're the only family you'll have when your parents are gone.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Daniel. And I love, love, love that you talk about self-care and recognizing your own mental health, the importance of taking care of your own mental wellness. And that's something that, like parents, siblings were not always that good at taking care of ourselves and that self-care piece of it. So I really am so glad that you brought that up. And I think it's so important for all of us to keep in mind and remember that we need to take care of ourselves. Erica, did you want to add?
Yeah, I think the biggest silver lining for me is the empathy I gained from having my sister. And even though it took me a really long time, the perspective led me to becoming a therapist. And what drove me to do this later in life. And it's, a debt of gratitude I owe to my sister for setting that ball in motion by being who she was.
Thanks, Erica. And Sunita, I don't think you had a chance to answer this one yet.
I echo Erica's sentiment about empathy. I definitely think that's deepened for me. I also think that going through the experience and where I am now, it's kind of been full circle. My parents were deeply affected by my brother's birth, and I think that they really became more spiritual. And throughout our growing up, that was something in the background for us consistently. And I feel that connection deepened as I've matured. And I think that's been my silver lining.
Thank you, Sunita. Just a couple last questions here. It's hard to ask this question and like quickly, what do you think about this? But when you think about the future, what comes to mind? And Erica, for you, it might be, honoring your sister's memory. So when you think about the future, and that's a big question, but your future and your siblings' future, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Erica, do you want to start since I already put you on the spot there?
Yeah, I can. I think for me, it's still not tangible what that looks like. I know it's something to honor her. But yeah, I don't know. I think in a lot of ways it's going forward and somehow supporting siblings in a way that I wasn't. And that's a little bit more for me, but it's still directly a result of my sister. I don't know, 10 years, 12 years after my dad died, I got my first tattoo. So maybe I'll get one to honor my sister at some point. But yeah, it's, I think it's probably a piece of it's probably still going to be, because now it's just my mom and me, maybe really working at trying to find some connection there with her, and make pathways there.
Thanks, Erica. Daniel, I'm curious to go to you next, because you guys are twins. So you're about as contemporary as it gets. You're the exact same age. So what do you think about when you think about your future, and Anthony's future?
I I think probably what crosses my mind more often is how can I make him self-sustaining when I'm gone? I love my brother. I never want to leave him out of my sight. And I hope I never get to a point where that does happen. I'd like to keep that within my willpower to make sure that, I keep on caring for him and loving him, that whoever, someone special that comes my way, she takes care of him. If that doesn't happen, I would like to see a trusted friend make sure that he's all right, even when he's much older, when he can't defend himself, he can't lawyer up and say, I need my advocacy. Someone has to speak for him. And I know I will be doing that when I'm old. But if that time gets cut short, I would like to see someone take care of him.
Thanks, Daniel. Cheryl, what do you think about when you think about your future and James's future?
I mean, I got thrown to the fire, as you know, about 5 years ago when my father got sick and had none of his or my brother's plans in place. And so when he passed, there is a plan. It's written down, it's legal, it's been notarized. My head went first to the who's going to do what? Well, I have that written down, it's already in a plan. There wasn't a plan before. If there was something that would happen to my father, it was my uncle, who at the time had dementia and couldn't stand in front of a court and do anything. And so I made sure that there's the backup guardian, there's all of the legal stuff is taken care of, all of the financial stuff is taken care of, all it's done. So I don't really have concerns for the future. I mean, he's got multiple organs that are not doing well. So I don't, every day is a new day. I don't know.
Well, it's really, it's so important. The future planning piece of it is so important. I mean, we could do multiple webinars. We could do a whole series with you guys on this, on future planning. And I'm so glad that you have done that and you can speak from a place of all the things I worry about, and there are many, that is not one, that is not one of them. And of course, you make plans and sometimes those plans change and you can tweak them and amend them, but you have it done. You have the majority of it done. And so that's, I think, reassuring and I hope aspirational for people who are maybe not in that situation right now, that you can get there and that you can have greater peace of mind about the future. So Sunita, do you want to close this one out?
Sure. When you talk about the future for me, I think I have a mixture of emotions: fear, anxiety, scared. My dad's 88 and he's still the primary caretaker for my sibling. And I know that there's certain things set up. And I know in my gut that I'll be able to navigate and figure things out, but taking on that full responsibility and then being only the two of us is crazy hard to accept when that time comes. So I think it's a mixture of emotions.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of siblings are in the exact same boat as you. So that is real. The fear is real, in many cases. So last question, lightning round, because I know that there are tons of questions in the chat. I can see them popping up. Just lightning round. What's one piece of advice you would give to professionals who are looking to support siblings? Just one piece of quick advice. What would you say? Cheryl, I'm going to start with you because you're familiar with these waters here.
Just one? We could have many presentations on that. I would say, there's a million different ones. But sibs we know our sibling best. And so if we're the ones that are the caregiver and we're saying that something's up, listen without judgment.
Yeah, thanks so much, Cheryl. And it's true, I think siblings know their brothers and sisters in ways that sometimes even parents don't, because we are their peers, we're their contemporaries, we have a different relationship. And so the more and more providers can invite siblings to the table to be part of that care team and to have a voice and to be part of that support network, I think it will have better outcomes for everyone. So thank you. Erica, are you ready with your nugget of wisdom there?
Yeah, I just would say validate their experience and invite them to express feelings, good, bad, without judgment. Yeah, that would be my advice.
Thanks, Erica. Validate, validate, validate. Absolutely. Sunita, one piece of advice for professionals?
Resources. Being familiar with resources, I think is key, because most of us are not an expert in any one thing, but knowing where to point somebody or where to get that additional support is of importance, I think.
Absolutely. And that's some of the work that we do. And I know other organizations like the Sibling Leadership Network. If you're an adult sibling watching this or being part of part of this experience with us, I can drop their website into the chat. Or I know we have a few sibs out there. It's just siblingleadership.org. They do a lot of work to connect adult siblings to each other, but also to resources in their states. And so that's a really valuable thing to keep in mind. But the more that we can make sure that siblings have access to those resources, the better off. Again, when we strengthen one member of the family, we strengthen the whole family. So let's include siblings in that. And Daniel, last but not least, one piece of advice for professionals who want to support siblings.
I would say advocate. Keep looking for resources for them. I only got into the SibNet Facebook community was when my therapist said, "Hey, I found something. Why don't you look into this?" And I was like, "Okay, let me see where this goes." And yeah, listen to if there's any healthcare professionals sitting with us, listen to the parent. If you're a pediatrician, listen to the parent. My mother was told, because we were twins, don't compare them. It's going to be fine. My mom was raised in a family of 10. So she knew something was wrong, and that person just went, they're going to do fine. If they're feeling like something's wrong instinctively, or they're noticing something, it's time to maybe look deeper.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. And that's why we appreciate so much the work of the National Family Support Technical Assistance Center and the focus on lived experience and really listening to people, exactly as you have said, and so many of you have said. I'd love to turn it over to the chat now. I don't know, Dana, we didn't really talk about how we're going to do the Q&A, but I'm guessing that you've been scrolling through the chat. Do you want to pose the questions, or do you want me to dig through? Okay,
well,
perfect.
I sent you one as a direct message. I'll just send them to you as direct messages so you can keep leading the conversation.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and I'd like to hear that directly from you guys' mouth, that the siblings know their siblings and that parents know their children, right? Like, we have to know that we are the experts of our own family, regardless of what the situation is. So that was perfect. While Dana is doing that, I do see a question that was in the chat earlier. It says, can you guys speak on the difficulties that you face because the possible lack of time with parents due to their siblings' needs? If one of you guys
It's a
can speak to
great
that.
question. Who wants to start with that one?
I would say that that is definitely a real problem. Difficulty. There's only so much that parents can do. And it's very common that one parent has a viewpoint and the other parent has their viewpoint. And those viewpoints will in fact clash. They will wax and wane. As a child watching that, that's very hard. That's very difficult. It feels like your parents don't love each other. It feels like your parents aren't going to get along. They're always going to be different. But that's human nature. We're still navigating our lives. We're still trying to navigate. And the only something my therapist told me was we only have one experience just one time. We only get to do it once. Every experience is unique. And don't worry about trying to do it right. Just figure out how to cooperate.
Thanks, Daniel. I saw another question. This was from Marissa. She said, I would love to hear from those of you who are also parents, how you feel like having a sibling with support needs impacts you as a parent and your relationship with your children. I see, Erica, I see you nodding. Sounds like you might have some ideas on that.
It really affected me in seeing my daughter's dynamics with each other because I didn't experience a typical sibling dynamic. So when they argued and fought, it really scared me. It concerned me when actually they were doing what is typically happens between siblings. It also impacted them because they grew up knowing their aunt as their aunt is. And particularly in my oldest daughter, it created a really, really strong sense of empathy in her as well. So yeah, I think it also, I just saw how my parents did things and it impacted me in how I parented my daughters as well. And the intention I used with them and trying to be aware of both of them, even though they're both different and things like that. So.
Thanks, Erica. That's great. I have to say, like, just as a parent, I agree 100%. My boys will start fighting or they'll be, jealous of each other or, whatever it is. And I'm like, oh, that's just a sib thing, I guess. That's just like I guess that's for all siblings. That was not unique just to my situation. We do have a parent who asked, as a parent of a 7-year-old sibling, what can I do today? I love that question because I love the idea that our words here today and sharing our experiences can have a ripple effect and can help others. So, I'll chime in while you guys are thinking and say, try to find a sib shop for them to attend in your local community. If you don't have one, contact us. We can help you start one. We can help you find ways to explore the possibility of starting a sib shop in your community. What else for Rebecca? What else would you guys say for a parent, of a young sibling? What are even some small things that she might be able to do to make a difference? Erica, I keep putting you on the spot, but I see you nodding.
I would just say something that you said earlier, whether it make some time. So whether it was, like you said earlier, put the other sibling to bed a little bit earlier, just carving out little moments, and kids absorb so much of that. They're like total sponges. And I think a little can go a very long way, especially with a 7-year-old. And have fun with them, laugh with them. It can be really heavy having a sibling that takes up all the resources and attention in the family. And so these kids sometimes need some levity and a space to talk about how they feel about having that sibling.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It kind of relates to another question, which is how do you handle when the other sibs think the child with needs is the favorite? And I think, Erica, what you just suggested is really helpful to that. I'm curious, Daniel, what do you think about that? I mean, I think especially with twins, and by the way, if you haven't seen the chat, there's someone who is the parent of twins who is thanking
I
you
could see that.
profusely because and saying so many parallels. But as a twin, I would imagine that came up for you one or
Oh,
two
yeah.
times.
Definitely in my teens, I felt like that. I questioned my parents on that. I'm a very challenging individual. I'm not afraid of conflict. I think at one time I would keep my mouth shut and pick my battles, but as an adult, when I find the opportunity, I will ask that question. But
So
no,
from a parent's
it's
perspective, what do you think? What would have been helpful to you in those
okay.
moments where
So
you felt like, oh, well, he's just the favorite.
to
Anthony's just
answer
the
those
favorite.
two points the best way, I would say I would let your child, the 7-year-old, the parent with the 7-year-old sibling, don't become defensive of your child with special needs if your sibling child expresses a desire to have something that is of their own space, of their own nature. And it's not just talking about, mom, I want my bedroom, mom, dad, I need my own bedroom. But just to give an example of where I'm coming from here, when I started learning to read, I was so excited to go to the library. I couldn't wait to go to the library. The library was just down the road from where my parents used to live. And my dad took both myself and my brother there. I wanted to read. I wanted to pick up books and look at all sorts of stuff. My brother, though he doesn't understand how to read or know how, he expected to be given Thomas the Tank Engine VHSs, one of those audiobooks that's on cassette, and he always chose specific ones. So it wasn't like he settled on one thing. If that wasn't there, he had a meltdown. And I can remember one time he had screamed and shouted his head off so loudly, like I can remember it echoing in the halls of the library. That was such an embarrassing moment for me, and I never forgot that. And I actually, for a while, it kind of ruined my desire to want to go to the library. Even to this day, I'm not someone who is like, I'm ready to go to the library today. And I can understand why a parent would defend their child because they can't speak for themselves. They can't explain to their sibling, well, I didn't mean to react like that. I just wanted the VHS. And so I think for that parent, to not to at least mitigate the feeling like the sibling is not the favorite in the family circle, just let them have a space, let them have a hobby, let them have an obsession, a love for something that they're passionate about. Let them have it. And if it's within reason, help them achieve that, because it's nothing wrong. Children have aspirations. Those aspirations change, but also the skill and the goal, I guess, to make to that goal or that dream or that hobby, that translates into other things in life as adults. And you got to let your kid breathe a bit. They're going to make it. They're going to figure it out, but you have to at least guide them to it.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And I think it's like also let them have let them, we get this all the time from parents who contact us and they say, I just want my sib kid to understand that, like, if they get hurt by their brother or sister, or if there's a behavior like a really embarrassing meltdown in the library where their voices are echoing through the hall, I need my sib kid to understand that, this behavior, like my affected child, my child with a diagnosis, it's part of their support needs. Like, they don't mean to hurt them, embarrass them, etc. And we always, try to invite the parent to think about, well, yes, absolutely, like, this was not an intentional thing that this child did to hurt the other child or to embarrass the other child. And can we still validate the siblings' feelings of being hurt or being embarrassed? Because regardless of the intent, we need to recognize the impact, right? And we need to validate that for the other child. Like maybe your sister didn't mean to hurt you, but I'm really sorry you're hurt. It's not right that you're hurt, right? So both things can coexist and often do. And can we make space for those? I can't believe that we are almost, I mean, I think we're out of time. I'm going to turn things back to Lachelle. I just want to thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart. I see so many thank yous in the chat. Really from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being with us today to share your experiences. Thank you to National Family Support Technical Assistance Center, that's such a mouthful, for having us and for highlighting, spotlighting siblings. We really appreciate this opportunity to connect with you all. So thank you, thank you.
Well, guys, this has been such. I can't find, hold on.
She's so moved by all of you that she can't find her slide. You see what you've accomplished.
Well, I want to say thank you guys so much for participating. Thank you for the panel. You guys know the next steps in the next 3 to 5 business days, you will receive the slides and you will receive the recording of this event. Next month, we are continuing with our series, Navigating the Family, and we're going to focus on spouses. When spouses become caregivers, how that affects the dynamics of the families. Again, we thank you for participating. We always need your feedback. SAMHSA requires us to see how we're doing. So if you guys can either scan the QR, or when you leave this meeting, you should be redirected to take the survey for us. After you complete the survey, you will need, it should reroute you to your certificate of attendance that you will need to download, and then you could put your name in it, and then you could print it or save it. But again, we thank you for this time. The panelists, if you guys want to hop off the call, you can. And we're going to do our debriefing in 15 minutes. So everyone else, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next month as well.